Good morning, good morning, beautiful people. Good afternoon, good evening. No matter what time it is, just know this is the day that the Lord has made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it. As always, God is good, and He is good all the time. All right, people. It's a lot of stuff happening right now. I don't know if y'all been paying attention to the motherfucking news, but motherfucking Breonna Taylor, to God be all the glory, all praises to the Most High God. Breonna Taylor, after almost, it feels like 3 years, finally feels like some justice is being brought to her. And then we got some news about Brittany Griner. Devastating. But let me tell you, right? I'm going to piece this up. I'm going to break it up into 2 different videos. But we talking about motherfucking Breonna Taylor in this motherfucking first one, right? Because I got to bring some positivity because it's something that we've been waiting on for years, all right? Do y'all pay attention to what's going on in society? I hope so. I'm about to show y'all this motherfucking video on YouTube, right? And I want y'all to motherfucking view this video through an objective mind. Watch it through objective lens. Step aside your ideologies if you can for a second. Try to be impartial, unbiased as you watch this. Without further ado, let's get into this, man.
Tonight, former Louisville police officer Brent Hankinson testifying in his own defense about his actions during the police raid that left Breonna Taylor dead.
She didn't need to die that night.
Though not on trial for the 26-year-old black woman's death, Hankinson is facing 3 charges of wanton endangerment for firing shots into an adjacent apartment, risking the lives of a neighbor, her young child, and her boyfriend.
Is there anything, Brett, that you feel like you did wrong on March 13th at 3003 Springfield Drive?
Absolutely not.
During that response, Breonna Taylor's mother leaving the courtroom. Hankinson's shots that night did not hit Taylor, according to the FBI. But this trial is thus far the only form of prosecution from the raid that killed her. She was unarmed. For years, attorneys for her family have said this is not enough.
They had wanton endangerment for the white neighbor's apartment, the bullets going there, but not for the bullets going into Breonna Taylor's body.
On the night of March 13, 2020, Louisville officers barged into Taylor's apartment as part of a search warrant related to a drug investigation. She was there with her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker III. Walker, who says he thought there were intruders, grabbed his gun and fired 1 round, hitting former Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly in the leg. Officers, including Hankinson, responded by firing more than 30 rounds. Hankinson says he believed his team was under attack from a figure with a rifle, though no rifle was discovered at the scene. Hankinson getting emotional on the witness stand.
Immediately, Sergeant Mattingly goes down. I knew Sergeant Mattingly was down, and I knew they were trying to get to him. And it appeared to me that they were being executed with this rifle.
Hankinson says he thought he could stop the threat, first firing into the patio door.
What rifle?
Then to the bedroom window of Taylor's apartment. No narcotics were found.
Say your name!
The case sparking national outrage the summer of 2020, highlighted as one of many tragic examples where an unarmed black person was fatally shot. The absence of criminal prosecution for Taylor's death highlighted in this trial as Hankinson denies wrongdoing. So what is your bottom line feeling about the trial? About Hankinson's guilt or innocence and what this trial is and isn't about?
My bottom line feeling about this trial is that it represents a miscarriage of justice regardless of the outcome. If Hankinson is not convicted, then you have an officer who fired his weapon dangerously in public, who's not being held accountable. Even if he is convicted, Breonna Taylor was killed, and yet she receives absolutely no justice.
And Ron Allen joins us now in studio. And Ron, both sides have wrapped up their cases. Closing arguments now set for tomorrow. The jury could get this case very soon.
Yes, it was a very brief trial. There was only 1 defense witness, Hankinson. He testified on his own behalf. he's basically saying that he acted because Taylor's boyfriend fired first, and he was trying to protect his fellow officers, and that's what his story is. And he even seemed to apologize for firing and endangering the other neighbors. He faces up to 5 years in prison. There's been other consequences. He lost his job, as did a couple of the other officers involved in the raid. So there's that. But Breonna Taylor's supporters, family, advocates still feel that this is not the point. No one's being held accountable for her death.
The thing about murder, though, is that they can try to throw all these different narratives out there to confuse the people. So over years, stories motherfucking misrepresent and all this, mess stuff up. They can do that. But the thing about murder is that when it comes to statute of limitations, there ain't none. 100 years can go by. If you just so happen to be alive, you can be tried for murder. So there's that.
The charges he faces deal with the neighbors, not her. And all that leaves people feeling like this is sort of besides the point, this trial. But it is. The serious charges for this individual, and we'll see what the jury comes back with.
Now, let me show you the motherfucking video of the motherfucking, I believe this is Attorney General's office speaking. This stuff get crazy. But wait, because we got an article that goes more into depth. I just know some people, for you visual learners, y'all need something to look at visually beside me. And I'm okay with that. But there's some of us that has to put eyeballs to text, read it out to understand it. And that's what I'm about, because that's my strong suit. So hold on. You gotta plug in my laptop so that bad boy don't die on me.
That Louisville Police Detective Joshua Janes and Sergeant Kyle Meany drafted and approved what they knew was a false affidavit to support a search warrant for Ms. Taylor's home. That false affidavit set in motion events that led to Ms. Taylor's death when other LMPD officers executed that warrant.
Now, if you don't understand the significance of these officers falsifying the evidence, let me piece this all together. I know you see two different clips and you're like, what's going on? So, about 4 officers had a warrant, a search and an arrest warrant to go into Breonna Taylor's home to apprehend her boyfriend, right? Which, actually, I can do better by just reading it to you. Let me show you. Just so y'all could get the play-by-play. This is what it is. We're gonna piece everything together. So currently, the police officers, these 4 police officers, they're currently being charged criminally for wanton endangerment of the apartment that was next to Breonna Taylor that had bullets flying to their apartments, right? This is one of the things that I've been talking about in my own hometown, that the police does this all the time where they shoot willy-nilly, shooting into people's home. People talk about how they have bullets in there flying through their bullets. And a lot of time they think that it's just random people shooting, but sometimes this be the police shooting at people, because the police is constantly shooting at people in Rochester, right? And I tell people these bullets can ricochet and they go into people's home, and that's what happened with this family. Bullets was flying in her home and it endangered her welfare, her child welfare, and her boyfriend's welfare. The crazy part about it is that this woman is white. This family, they're associated with this white woman. You know what I'm saying? And here it is, you're charging criminally for the endangerment of their lives, but there's no criminal charges, there's no indictment going forth for them actually murdering Breonna Taylor. And then all of the evidence that is coming forth even now is showing that they didn't even have the legal means, the legal grounds to even go in her house for her boyfriend. We're going to get there, because that's what she was talking about with this evidence. I'm going to show it again to you, but I'm going to show it to you after we motherfucking watch this video. Or after we read this article. 4 cops tied to Breonna Taylor's death arrested and charged, but not for Breonna Taylor's motherfucking murder, her death. Look at this date. So this is motherfucking recent. This is today. This was decided, 10:45. It says, forgive me for reading to you. I figured I'd read it to you for those who aren't as, quick with reading, who aren't as efficient with reading. So I got you. It says the FBI has arrested 4 current and former Louisville Metro police officers who were somehow involved in the deadly raid that killed 26-year-old Breonna Taylor, according to multiple sources. The same Breonna Taylor that they're not being charged for her death, aka her murder. The officers who were taken into custody Thursday morning today include former detectives Brett Hankinson and Joshua James, as well as Detective Kelly Hannah Goodlit and Sergeant Kyle Meany. The Department of Justice confirmed the arrests in a press conference Thursday morning, during which U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland elaborated on the charges. They include 2 counts of deprivation of civil rights against Hankinson for firing 10 shots through a window and glass door along the side of Taylor's apartment. She's not included in their charges. They're not being charged for some reason for her murder. They killed this woman and had no reason to, no grounds to. Let's continue. It says the 3 other officers, James, Goodlit, and Meany, have been charged with conspiracy for violating Taylor's 4th Amendment rights due to their roles in drafting and submitting a false affidavit used to secure a search warrant for Taylor's residence in a drug-related investigation. They're being charged for conspiracy for violating her 4th Amendment right because they drafted and then submitted legally a false affidavit, which this false affidavit was utilized to secure a search warrant, which you cannot get a search warrant in the United States without it being signed off on a judge. So that means that this judge looked over all of this information and said, you know what? I believe everything that these police officers provided me to be true. Signature. They go to search her home. They shoot up her home, endanger the lives and welfare of her neighbors, and murder her in cold blood. And then had the audacity to charge her boyfriend for firing at police officers, which he did in self-defense. You have every right to defend yourself, even if it's against a motherfucking police officer. Trust and believe me. They like you to think, no, because they don't want you to defend yourself against the police officer, especially if you're a part of the poor. And include racial minorities? Nah, bro. They don't want that. No officers have been directly charged with Taylor's death. That's crazy, because here it is. We just see that her murder was because they said that there was drugs in her house, that her boyfriend was this drug dealer, and they got this search warrant for drugs in her house that they attached to her boyfriend. They used this affidavit, this legally drafted and submitted affidavit, to secure a search warrant. All unlawfully. All of this is illegal. And unlawfully went into her home and shot her and killed her. But they have not been directly charged with Taylor's death. This is wild. Including the officer who shot her, Miles Cosgrove, although he was fired 9 months after the deadly raid. Now, I don't know about y'all, but it's not. You're not going to get fired if they believe that what you did was within your means, within your position as a police officer. Let me tell you something. Daniel Prude in Rochester, New York was murdered, and everybody's seen it on camera by a police officer, right? We motherfucking march for justice. The police officer that motherfucker was in the push-up position on his motherfucking head while he had that spick bat on his face, motherfucker still is employed by Rochester Police Department, as well as the other police officers who did nothing about it. If they believe that you ain't do nothing, they ain't gonna fire you. Why the freak y'all fired this nigga? If he ain't do nothing unlawfully. Where are the criminal charges at? Charge these niggas. Breonna Taylor should be alive today, Garland said Thursday. Hankinson was not part of the initial investigation that led to the search warrant on Taylor's apartment. Hankinson is one of the police officers. He was not part of the initial investigation that led to the search warrant on Taylor's apartment, but he played a pivotal role in the execution of the warrant during which she was killed. He wasn't a part of the initial investigation, but he was a part of the reenactment, he was a part of bringing forth, executing the motherfucking search warrant that killed her, but he wasn't a part of the initial investigation. He was fired in the summer of 2020 for what the department described as an extreme indifference to the value of human life. You fired him for extreme indifference to the value of human life? What's an extreme indifference to the value of human life? Is that a fancy way of saying murder? Killing people? Killed the person? An extreme indifference to the value of human life. And then charged by the Kentucky Attorney's General Office on 3 counts of wanton endangerment for bullets that went into the apartment of one of Taylor's neighbors. Hankinson was acquitted earlier this year. Double jeopardy protects him. Double jeopardy protects him. By the grace of God, he's protected. I believe that's the 6th Amendment. But if he was acquitted, they can't charge him again. But at least he's not the one that directly charged, or the one that directly shot her. That's the motherfucking Miles Cosgrove. It's crazy though. He was acquitted earlier this year. The charges against the 3 other officers include not only allegations of falsifying information, but an attempted cover-up after the fact. Whoa, attempted cover-up. But y'all not charging them of her death directly. This is interesting. So not only did they falsify a motherfucking legal document by motherfucking drafting it and submitting it legally, which motherfucking procured them their search warrant, which led to them shooting her for no reason, because 1, the search warrant was illegal. 2, there was no drugs. 3, she was in bed. Like, what the freak? She wasn't committing no crime. What crime did you witness? Like, y'all just violated every right possible. But yet, still not charging these officers of her death. This is interesting. And now, attempted cover-up after the fact. Let's continue to read, guys. This is crazy. James and Goodlet met up in a garage in May 20. Whoa. James and Goodlet met up in a garage 2 months after Taylor's death and agreed to tell investigators a false story, according to the Department of Justice. James and Goodlet are the detectives, if I'm not mistaken. Let's go back on. Here's the names. Kelly Hannah Goodlet, detective. Joshua Haynes, former detective. Interesting. And in order to be a detective, see, a detective, that ain't no regular average schmo. That ain't your motherfucking regular patrol officer. Okay? A detective. Do you know the training, the extensive training that separates a detective from a basic A patrol officer? Depending on your location here in New York, it could include your college degree, you know what I'm saying? Which means that you have furthered your education in some field that's related to criminal justice. You know what I'm saying? So you're expected to be motherfreaking damn near an expert in your field as a detective. You ain't no regular juggler. It's crazy. These niggas is detectives. And they decided 2 months after they killed Breonna Taylor that they were going to agree and tell investigators a false story. And this is coming from the Department of Justice, y'all. This ain't just anybody. These niggas raggedy, and they usually cover for their own. When the Department of Justice is motherfucking snitching you out, and you a police attachment, you a motherfucking law enforcement agency, you attached to, you're a police officer. Nigga, there's no saving you. James, who was responsible for filling out the warrant, the same man that agreed to tell investigators a false story, is the same man who was responsible for filling out the warrant, the same warrant that was created based on a falsified affidavit. Oh, that's crazy. But Breonna Taylor's death, her murder, is still not being charged to these corrupt, crooked cops. Niggas like to tiptoe around that word. Corrupt, crooked cops exist. They ain't no small batch either. We ain't talking about no tiny little bad apples. Nah, nigga, the Bible says ain't nothing good but the Father. That means everything on this out here. Everything out here. Ain't none of it good except your motherfucking great Jehovah. I don't know what to tell you, man. I don't know what to tell you. James, who was responsible for filling out the warrant, was fired by the Louisville Metro Police Department in 2022 after officials concluded that he lied in the affidavit. They fired him after they found out he lied in the affidavit, but her murder still not being charged against these officers. Wow. And their police department knew they lied on the affidavit. James wrote that he had verified through the postal inspector. James wrote that he had verified through the postal inspector that Jamarcus Glover, which is Taylor's ex-boyfriend, who they suspected as a drug dealer and the main target of their investigation, that he was receiving suspicious packages at her address. Said he verified that. But then there's this little word, but. That claim was refuted by both the postal inspector and James' colleagues, which means that postal inspector said, that nigga lying. Excuse me, Father. Jesus. Anyways. That motherfucking postal worker was like, nah, bro. You can't verify nothing. I ain't say they receiving no suspicious packages with no drugs, no none of that. So without that existing, nigga, Father forgive me. The warrant, their actions, everything they did was unlawful. Yet someone was murdered. Like, I am convinced that police feel that when they cause harm to people, especially people of color, black people, they don't have to be held accountable because they're saying we did our job. Everything that they did that led up to that was illegal, which led to them not only wanting endangerment to the motherfucking neighbors, but they murdered Breonna Taylor. Like, you cannot get around the fact that Breonna Taylor was straight up murdered. She's dead because of these police officers' accumulated unlawful actions. Everything they did was unlawful. So therefore, it violates not only one or two every constitutional right, in addition to the fact that she's dead by your own negligence in unlawful behavior and your police officers. And people look up to y'all, and here in Rochester, they're praising you weirdos. Oh my, like, y'all so corrupt. And it's like nobody realized how corrupt y'all are but us black people or something. And motherfucking Latinos. We see like we the only ones that knows y'all niggas raggedy. Lord, forgive me. James' arrest was reported by local station WDRB early Thursday morning. Goodlet, who helped fill out the warrant and worked on the same small team that led the investigation, has been on leave since early 2021. Why put somebody on leave for something that you don't view as criminalistic, or you know what I'm saying? If their actions were viewed as misconduct enough to be fired, you know what I'm saying? It just might be severe enough to motherfreaking be criminal, especially when someone loses their life at the hands of this unlawful motherfreaking, this misconduct that they're putting out. It's the same thing like when the police arrest people who commit a crime. They said, if you are in the act of committing a felony crime, right? And then you commit all these other felonies in the process, nigga, that just makes everything worse for you. Lord, forgive me. Come on. If it applies to the regular people, this accumulation of bad, why the freak doesn't the accumulation of bad apply with y'all? Y'all ain't perfect. Majority of our police force people expect these people to be motherfreaking professionals and intelligent people and educated people, and you'd be sadly mistaken. But the bulk of the criminal justice system is motherfreaking held by and law enforcement is basically enforced by niggas with no motherfreaking college education. They just got high school diplomas, Lord forgive me. But they got high school education, no college degree. They don't know nothing about their job except those little bitty weeks that they spend in the academy. And every jurisdiction is different, right? In New York State troopers are expected to be in academy for what? I think it's like 28 weeks. But you go somewhere like down south, it ain't that long. It ain't that long. But here it is. This dude been on leave since 2021. Yet no one has been charged of her murder. But they firing people. We see all this misconduct. We see all this illegal actions. They motherfreaking falsifying information to get, falsifying affidavits to get motherfreaking warrants. And then judges signing off on these raggedy things. Like, what the freak, dude? Do you just sign what niggas put in front of you? Like, you ain't got the discernment to motherfreaking say, let me look into it. Because y'all, let me guess, y'all trust them too. Just as much as the ignorant people out here. Y'all just think the police is just so perfect. They ain't doing no wrong. Y'all just signing off on anything. Like, do you know how crazy that would make the judge look? Like, you signed off on something. You put your name on something that was raggedy, poorly put together, falsified. You rendered a warrant which resulted in the death. This is why judges need to be sued. That's a topic for another day, because absolute immunity protect these jokers. But judges is just exempt, or they are not exempt. They are just as motherfreaking. They should be held accountable just like the rest of them. The same thing with these raggedy lawyers, these raggedy politicians, these legislators, executive branches, all of them. Hold them all accountable. Here it is, you a judge, and you sign off on a warrant that is supported by a falsified affidavit, which the warrant you signed off on resulted in the murder of someone that should not have ever been put in that predicament, because all the information that led to you signing that document was unlawful. Make no sense. When a probe was opened into allegations that she and several other officers had thrown drinks at Louisville residents from their police vehicles. Meany, the sergeant in charge of Goodlet and Jane's team, was responsible for overseeing the investigation, including vetting affidavits and search warrants submitted by his team. And here in Rochester, I see police harassing people all the time. It's not an uncommon phenomenon, and it's so common that people don't even bat an eye anymore. They don't think nothing of it. They just assume that the police is what they're doing is right, because you see all these police in impoverished neighborhoods raiding people. We have police constantly raiding people here in Rochester, and a lot of times they have the same setup. Janky motherfreaking warrants. Half the time these niggas ain't even got no warrant. Lord forgive me. Lord knows I'm trying not to say the nigga word. This is self-improvement him trying to do. But Lord, it's hard. It's hard. But it's wild. They do it here. And when I say something like, hey, what you doing? Mind your business, going. Then they want to start talking crazy to me. I'm policing my community because you up in my community raiding. You violate their constitutional rights, nigga. You'll violate mine. Shee. Lord, forgive me. Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark confirmed that these charges are separate from the Department of Justice's ongoing investigation into whether Louisville Metro Police Department has pattern and practices of violating systems or citizens' rights. So the Department of Justice has an investigation into the entire police department and their policing tactics, their policing practices, right? But this Assistant Attorney General, her charges is for these police officers and their poor the falsified affidavit, them lying and conspiring with one another to motherfucking lie. But people keep saying, oh, these police, it's just one and twosie bad apples. It ain't no onesie twosies. One unit is the reflection of the entire unit. If the limb raggedy, you expect that everything else is going to be raggedy. If it's raggedy at the top, it's going to be raggedy at the bottom. It's not taken care of at the bottom, you assume that it's not taken care of at the top. Come on, man. It's greater than you think. This is a reflection. This is a reflection of what is happening in everyday society. This is what Rochester looks like on a regular basis. But because there's poor investigative work that goes into this, we barely have investigative journalists here in Rochester. So a lot of the cookie praising police work, that's all it results in is praise. And a lot of these Titus niggas raggedy. They're literally corrupt, and they do this on a regular basis. Violate people's amendment search seizures. They searching people unlawfully, raiding people's homes, pulling them over for traffic infractions. And next thing you know, they end up dead or motherfucking hemmed up for some wild. It's crazy. It's crazy how you get pulled over for a traffic infraction. And next thing you know, you outside your vehicle getting everything searched. They don't go together. They don't go together. But that's the topic for another story. Let's continue. Assistant Attorney General Kristen confirmed that these charges are separate from the Department of Justice's ongoing investigation into whether Louisville Metro Police Department has patterns and practices of violating citizen rights. That's the whole motherfucking department, not just one or two police officers. Let's watch this again.
That Louisville Police Detective Joshua Janes and Sergeant Kyle Meany drafted and approved what they knew was a false affidavit to support a search warrant for Ms. Taylor's home. That false affidavit set in motion events that led to Ms. Taylor's death when other LMPD officers executed that warrant.
Now, I want to bring something else to your attention because she made me think. She said that the police officers falsifying the affidavit, which led to her being murdered, it basically trickled the events, right, that led to her murder. I remember in my undergraduate studying this thing, what they call fruit of the poisonous tree. And it basically falls under what they call the exclusionary rule or exclusionary doctrine, however you want to motherfucking look. But it's the fruit of the poisonous tree basically means if you get something that's bad, right? If you pull a bad fruit from that tree, every other fruit that you pull from that tree is going to be bad because that's the assumption, right? So what it's tailored to is that it's saying that if you acquire evidence illegally, everything that you find throughout your investigation afterward is inadmissible in the court of law because the way they view it is that you wouldn't have found B, C, D, E, F, G if it wasn't for A, which A you initiated illegally. Let me show it to you. This EDU, so it's a credible source, all right? The fruit of the poisonous tree, a doctrine that extends the exclusionary rule to make evidence inadmissible in court if it was derived from evidence that was illegally obtained. As the metaphor suggests, if the evidential tree is tainted, so is its fruits. And then it goes into, talking about the case that, set it in place. And then it goes to tell you, like the exclusionary rule itself, this doctrine is subject to 3 important exceptions. Then it goes into tell you what those exceptions are. If it was discovered from a source independent of the illegal activity, right? So even if the police did something legally, if it was pulled from a source that had absolutely jack squat to do with any of that illegal, it's all right. If the discovery was inevitable, like, I don't know, your vehicle is on fire and it's inside one of the downtown buildings. I mean, it's inevitable. They're going to see it. They're going to find out about it, Or if there's attenuation between the illegal activity and the discovery of the evidence. Now, right now I'm drawing a blank of what this means. So we're going to Google the definition. The reduction of force. So reduce. So if there's a reduction between the illegal activity and the discovery of the evidence. Not really sure what that line means. I have my notes to the side, but this is irrelevant. I just wanted to include it just so for those people who want that information, it's right there. I figured it was to read it. But the whole point of this is that I'm saying is that she even said that they falsified the evidence, or they falsified the affidavit, which got them to get the search warrant signed off by the judge, which led them to her address, which led them to shooting up her house, harming her neighbors, killing her. And so everything that they did is tainted because the very first thing that they did is tainted. And all of it has to do with them. There's no source that's independent of them. You know what I'm saying? This wasn't inevitable. It was very avoidable. You know what I'm saying? And there's no reduction between the actual activity and the discovery of the evidence. Whatever that means. I'm not about to dissect that now, but at least we got the first two. But either way is that, like I said, if that applies to the courts where you can't use evidence in the courts, it's viewed as inadmissible, right? That same concept should be applied here. Nigga, everything you did immediately following the very first thing that you did that was unlawful is tainted, which you should be held accountable for. You're not going to be excused for killing Breonna Taylor and harming her neighbors just because you think that you was acting in good faith by carrying out your duties associated to the search warrant. The search warrant is based on some BS that you and your colleagues motherfucking conjured up. So you should be held accountable. Basically. In the exclusionary rule, for those who's like, well, what's the exclusionary rule? Just so you know, because the fruit of the poisonous tree comes from the exclusionary rule. And the exclusionary rule is basically stating that this evidence should be excluded because of X, Y, and Z. But let's see what it says. It says, the exclusionary rule prevents the government from using most evidence gathered in violation of the United States Constitution. So even if they have found something in her home, drugs on behalf of her boyfriend and such, criminally possessed firearms and everything of the sort, even if they found all that, they wouldn't even be able to use any of it in a court of law. Why? Because of this thing right here called the exclusionary rule. When you do something, when your initial action is illegal and you don't have those exceptions involved, nigga, everything that follows that, excuse me, Lord, motherfucking is tainted. Therefore, you can't use it. In this instance, you should be held accountable for your own actions because you're not protected by your job. You didn't act within your legal grounds or your legal means of your employment. It's plain and simple. And then we have things like the 14th Amendment. I'm always Googling this because I'm always telling people about it. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life. Breonna Taylor was deprived of her life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Where's the due process? They not even trying to try these dudes. Where the freak is the indictment? Grand jury? What are you doing? Where's the indictment? Our 14th Amendment says no state should deprive any person of their life without due process of the law. There's no due process involved. She was murdered. That's the end of the story. That's not right. Y'all got to do better. Black people shouldn't be treated like this. Black people, Latinos, poor people, immigrants, we are all, according to the 14th Amendment, protected by the Bill of Rights. We are protected by the Constitution because this amendment includes naturalized citizens, which are immigrants. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Where's the equal protection of the laws? Breonna Taylor was murdered. She is deprived of her life, and there is no due process that took place. Bring justice to Breonna Taylor. End of story. Period. If you want people to think otherwise of you more positively, then give them more positive experiences.